Hi, I'm Jessica Meyer.
And I'm Tom Meyer.
We're with Tree Rose for You.
So this is our third year in business, but we've been planting trees for over 25 years. So we planted these trees ourselves by hand, and there's over 200 trees here on our property. We planted all of these by hand, and there was just a necessity for a better way for folks to plant lots and lots of happy little trees around their house.
We also had a tree lot, or not tree lot, we had a lake lot that we wanted to plant trees on. And he's like, well, I'm going to build a tree planter. And I was like, for just our trees? And then what are you going to do with it, you know? So, and then he had talked to one of the nurseries, and the guy's like, well, you should maybe get into business doing that. People are asking all the time, like, who can plant these for us? Because we don't want to do it. So he thought about that more and more, and he's like, think I want to do it. I want to get out there and plant more trees. So
there's not a lot for who will plant
like a small
large quantities of trees, and for the small, like, conservation grade trees in Burleigh County, they only do large properties for farms and ranches. That's their purpose. That's what they were created for. So if you've got a 1 or 2 acre lot, you can buy the trees through soil conservation. You can actually buy them through any of the soil conservation districts, but they will not plant them for you in Burleigh County. So that's actually why we planted these ourselves by hand with a crew of about 12 and 2 10-hour days worth of work. So when we went to do it again, I actually built machinery so that we could plant the trees and lay the fabric ourselves, and that took only a few hours, and I think there was 4 of us that did that in a few hours with the machinery. And then talking through the Burleigh County Soil Conservation, it sounded like there was actually a pretty high demand, and we found there is a pretty high demand for people to provide that service for people that have smaller properties, under that 100-acre mark. So we started up a business, and we planted thousands of trees that year, and I think we've planted thousands and tens of thousands of trees every year since.
I was just telling a story about one day when it was like hot and the bugs were bad, and mulch might have been involved in some of the stuff, but we just laugh about it. We get over it. It's fine. He does.
Are you talking about those bags of mulch that you threw at me?
Yeah.
Is that what you're...
But for the most part, it's fine, and we come home. Yeah, we come home and we still get along. Yeah.
And
he does a lot of like
beginning of every
equipment
spring and
work.
Again, by the end of the summer, I still love her. Probably the most common way that you will see trees sold in nurseries or garden centers is in container trees. For trees, you're usually looking at number 1 size nursery container up to maybe a number 25 size nursery container, and that probably doesn't mean a whole lot to you, just a number for a size, but they call them 1 gallon or 10 gallon or 25 gallon trees, although they're not actually a full US gallon. It's a little bit smaller in actual US gallons than what the nursery container size standard is, or trade size is. Like evergreens, you'll see those a lot of times in number 2 size, which is about 1.5 gallons size, up to maybe a number 25 size, which is about 20 US gallon size. It's probably 18 inches in diameter, 15 or 18 inches tall. This tree right here, so this would be a 5 to 6 foot tall spruce, Black Hills spruce tree. If this were in a nursery container, it would be in at least a number 25 size nursery container. A number 25 size container, like I said, would be about 18-inch diameter, and it'd probably be about 18 inches tall. And that's going to have a root ball mass somewhere around, if it's field grown and it's in dirt, that's probably going to be about 200-pound, 250-pound tree. So you're probably going to need some equipment to move that around. I'm a pretty big guy. I go to the gym, I lift. I don't think I could pick up and plant a 350-pound tree by myself with my hands. So, and moving it from the driveway all the way across the yard would be a whole nother story without equipment. Tree Rows for You, we've got that specialized equipment. A lot of the equipment we've built ourselves. That's pretty typical in the nursery industry for tree farm owners and nursery owners to build a lot of their own equipment because it's so niche, it's so specialized. There aren't a ton of manufacturers out there that make stuff for these specific jobs that we need to do on nurseries, tree farms, and planting trees. So we just end up building it ourselves, but we've got specialized equipment that we've built for handling the trees themselves. We get up to a 8-9 foot tall spruce tree that can weigh close to 1,000 pounds. And we've got a root ball grabber that's a hydraulic attachment that you can attach to a skid steer or a tractor, or we've got it on a small articulating loader. And basically it's just a hydraulic set of hands that we can grab the root mass of those trees, the root balls of those trees with, and carry them around, place them exactly how we need them. It just makes it convenient for us to be able to place them the proper way. If you go to treerows4u.com, treerows4u.com, you should see a tab labeled articles, and we've got all kinds of helpful articles on there, from tree trimming to planting trees for reducing energy costs around your home, or creating windbreaks, privacy fences, all kinds of stuff. Hi, I'm Tom from Tree Rows for You. You might not be thinking about trimming trees right now because it is February in North Dakota. Or maybe with the warm weather, you are thinking about your trees right now. But either way, right now is a good time to trim your trees. If you can get out there without having to step through too much mud, that is. But it's a great time right now because everything's dormant for your shade trees. So there's really no worry about disease or insect infestation, or the tree trying to push too much of its energy towards repairing whatever you've cut off. You can go ahead and trim it right now, and in the spring when they wake up, they'll just seal that cut over. They shouldn't really try too hard to push up new growth through that. What does come through will be very small, and you can go ahead and make your cuts on any of those undesirable branches. So for shade trees and fruit trees, the best time to trim them is during their dormant season, which is going to be in North Dakota, usually about October through maybe mid-April. In April, you'll start to see some of your buds on your shade trees and fruit trees will start getting bigger. They'll start opening it up. And once that happens, then unless you're trying to promote growth in a specific area, you really want to stay away from trimming. So you want to try to keep it less than 25% of the mass of the tree. So if you look at the branches and you've got 50 branches on there, you want to take no more than 12 branches off, just as a rough guideline for you. If you go to treerows4u.com, treerows4u.com, you should see a tab labeled articles, and we've got all kinds of helpful articles on there, from tree trimming to planting trees for reducing energy costs around your home, or creating windbreaks, privacy fences, all kinds of stuff. what we want to do when we're cutting a large branch like this, because this branch has got a lot of mass on it, you can see it's real tall. It's a competing leader now, and we don't want that. It will eventually cause problems and probably break off, and it's zapping energy away from the main tree that we want to focus here, so this tree grows tall. But with that large branch and the weight on it, we don't want this to tear back when this branch falls and tear bark and protection away from the desirable parts of the tree. We want to make sure we only cut off the parts of the tree that are a problem, that are undesirable. So we'll make an undercut here first, about a third of the way, less than half of the way through the branch. And then what that'll do is that'll serve as just a block for that tearing. So when we come up here and we start to cut all the way through and the weight pulls down, it's still gonna tear, but it'll tear only to that cut that we made underneath, and then it'll just break off and fall off. And then we can come back here to where we really want our final cut to be, which is just outside of this branch collar, the large tapered part here, and we'll cut right there for our final clean cut. So we can see our first cut here, this undercut. We cut just about a third of the way through. We want to make sure we stay less than half of the way through. That's going to be just our little stop for when we make our full cut all the way through and that weight pulls down and starts to tear. It'll tear just to this cut, and then that cut will break off and the branch will be gone. And then when that weight's gone, we don't have any leverage again here. We don't have any weight on this, and we can come back to that branch collar where we see that taper come in. That's where we want to make our final cut.
Okay. branch is at a really acute angle, tight angle up against the tree, and then it also crosses these other branches. So eventually as these grow larger, they're going to rub together, and then the rubbing is going to cause damage on one branch or the other. These branches are good, these are healthy, these are the kinds of branches that we want. This one we want to get rid of because he's going to cause problems. This branch up here is also a crossing branch, but you can see how it grows from a branch back in towards the main trunk of the tree. Those we want to get rid of. Vertical shoots like this they call water sprouts. This one here, he'll go away when we cut this guy, so it's all part of that. We don't have any suckers, but you can see we had suckers in previous years that we trimmed off. So those are good. You can see how the cut against there is dead. There's no green or new buds or new growth. So that shouldn't sprout up any more new suckers. And that should be good to go for next year. My helper. You think there's a sucker that's gonna sprout there? So, all right.
It'll take me a few tries. I should have brought the new one.
See, we've got multiple branches real close together. So because they're so close together, they're also going to be crossing. You can see this one has a little bit of damage on him already from moving around in the wind and rubbing against the other one. This one here, they're all in this same space, trying to kind of compete for space, for light, for nutrients. So we'll just get those guys trimmed off. We've got another one here that he looks like he got damaged somehow or another. He's kind of barely hanging on anyways, but we'll trim him off so he goes. We've got another spot right up here where we've got multiple branches coming out of the same junction there. We don't want that. We want to get rid of those guys so it doesn't crowd this main branch right here. This is a good branch. Healthy, it's got some strong branches off of it. That'll be good to go for the life of the tree.
It'd be easy to break it down into evergreens and deciduous. So evergreens being the type of tree that stays green all year long, needles or leaflets or whatever they have. They keep their color, they keep their foliage year round all through. And then deciduous being those that will drop their leaves in the fall, and then they will bud out and have new growth and new leaves again in the spring. I figured that's kind of an easy way to break down the varieties and what we've got that works in North Dakota. So some of the advantages of the evergreens are, of course, that they keep their foliage year round. So like right now, when we're outside of the growing season, these trees are still full and green and look just the same way that they look during the growing season. Whereas the deciduous, of course, we've got no leaves on them, so they're, you know, just sticks. They don't provide a whole lot of beauty. They don't provide a whole lot of shelter, wind block, snow block, anything like that. Whereas the evergreens keep it all year round. The one thing though with evergreens that is kind of a disadvantage is that they've got a bit slower growth rate than most of what deciduous trees will have. As you can see, these trees were planted at roughly the same time, and they were about the same size when they were put in the ground. This one's just over 6 foot tall. This guy here and most of the other ones are in a similar state. It's 40 feet tall, so quite a size difference there, and that's about seven full seasons of growth that they've had since they were planted. So huge difference in the growth rates there. With evergreens, there probably aren't as many different species available. There's not quite as much variety probably with evergreens versus a deciduous. There's a couple of different varieties of spruce. There's 1 or 2 pines that work well in North Dakota. A couple of cedar or juniper varieties. Douglas fir in some cases can work. And then there's some varieties or cultivars of those species, but that's about it for choices on evergreens in North Dakota. With the deciduous trees, you've got shrubs or tree form. You know, there's flowering trees, there's trees that'll grow up into, you know, big, tall, wide shade trees. We've got tall, skinny trees. You know, there's a lot of different varieties that you can get in that. Like some of the shade trees, you've got maples, you've got elm, you've got varieties of poplar. There's a couple of different oaks that work real well in North Dakota. Honey locust, ash, you know, hackberry. There's a lot of different choices for large shade trees. Flowering trees, there's a few different types of lilac trees. There's some Juneberry trees. Any of the fruit trees will get flowers on them. Some of them are very pretty, some of them are a little inconspicuous. There's lots of different varieties of flowering crabs. So there's way more variety out there with the deciduous trees. So there's advantages and disadvantages of both, or maybe just traits, not necessarily advantages or disadvantages, but traits that you might prefer or not prefer, things that might work well for you in one situation, but not so much in others. It's kind of up to you on that. Let's see. Another thing I guess to consider is, of course, our climate, our soils here in North Dakota. With the evergreens, most of them prefer a lower pH soil. They prefer things to be a little bit more acidic, which we don't have a lot of acidic soil in North Dakota. Most of our soils here are going to be a little bit more on the alkaline side. That's not to say that they won't grow. Obviously, these guys are doing fine. And there's plenty of evergreens around North Dakota that are doing great. But we got to be a little bit more selective with our sites and where we put them, or if we can use them on certain properties. And then deciduous trees, some of those have a little bit higher tolerance to different or varying soil types or conditions, as well as moisture. The evergreens, most of them are gonna really prefer good moist soil. There's some drought tolerance with some of those species. Of course, we do have some species of evergreen that are native to North Dakota. So even western North Dakota, where we're real dry and some of that soil is real sandy, there's still evergreens that are native to the area and work well out there. But you just have to be a little bit more particular about your site selection. With spruce, I guess what I like to do on those is I like to trim some of the bottom branches so we don't get those that hang on the bottom and touch the ground. Because if you've got branches overhanging and sitting right on the ground, nothing's going to grow there because it doesn't get any sunlight to grow. And I just think it looks nicer and cleaner when the bottom is not touching the ground. You can see here nothing is growing for us because I keep this area in the tree rows tilled so that we don't get weeds and unwanted growth on things. That way, the soil, the moisture, everything can go to the trees and not have that zapped away by weeds or tall grass or something like that. Mostly I keep it up pretty well on the tilling. There are some pines. There are a couple of species of pines in North Dakota that we use: Scotch pine, ponderosa pine, and those will drop needles. And so those needles, if you just let them drop and let them stay where they're at, they act kind of like a mulch. And so that mulch will help keep moisture in. It will help keep the weeds and undesirable growth like tall grass and that. It'll help keep that from growing in those spaces, and that will help the tree. So I always say, leave the needles. If you've got a pine tree, when those needles drop, if you want to rake them up so they're a little bit closer and stay neat to the tree, rake them up, do that, but leave them there. Don't bag them up and haul them off to the collection sites. Those are a really good mulch and are really helpful for those trees. So it's better if they stay there. So we'll talk a little bit about choosing the right size tree for you. I guess there's a lot to consider other than just the mature size and the mature height of a tree. You can purchase trees, or you can have trees planted by a landscaper or a nurseryman in various different sizes, even within the same species. If we're looking at evergreen, like a Black Hills spruce like this, you can purchase those in everything from a small seedling that might be a plug or a bare root, all the way up to trees that are quite a bit larger than this. We offer trees, Black Hills spruce in fact, in everything from a bare root seedling all the way up to 8, 9, 10 foot tall trees, which would be roughly twice the size of this tree. And then with deciduous trees, again, we offer those in bare root size, so real small, almost sticks, all the way up to some of them up to about a 2-inch caliper, which would be maybe a 10 or 12 foot tall tree. Some of them even larger than that, up to 16, 20 foot tall. Probably not quite as tall as this guy here that's almost 40 feet tall. We don't do the tree moving with the big trucks and the spade and that. We do nursery field grown trees. So I guess there's some things to consider on what size is going to work for you. And probably one of the first things to consider when you're deciding what size tree you're going to plant is your budget. If you're going to be planting hundreds of trees, then you probably don't want to be spending hundreds of dollars on each tree, because that's going to add up pretty quickly. In that case, you might choose to do the bare root seedlings, the conservation grade seedlings that are going to be, maybe 12 to 24 inches tall. So they'll be small to start, but they will grow into, mature trees just like any other size that you would start with will. They just are going to take it a little bit more time to get there. But that's going to be a lot more budget friendly, especially if, like I said, you are planting lots of trees, hundreds of trees, thousands of trees. That size is definitely more economical. It can be done more quickly with the machines that are used to do that, and then your price per tree is considerably less. You just have to wait more time for it to grow and mature. And with us, when we do the bare root conservation plantings, we provide you with replacement trees the following year, and then you come pick them up from us, and you just go and you hand plant the few replacements that you need to make, and it's not such a big deal. Whereas if you're planting a larger size tree, something like a 5-foot, 6-foot tree like this Black Hills spruce here, they're going to cost you a couple $100 a piece, and then a little bit more if you're having someone plant them for you. So you're probably not going to plant thousands of them at a time, because that's a huge chunk of money to spend on trees. So you're probably going to have fewer to take care of. You can give each one a little bit more attention. And then also, if you're spending a couple $100 on a tree, you're going to want to make sure that you get out there and you put some water on it. Newly planted trees, it's absolutely critical in North Dakota, as dry as we are, that you get water on them. 2 times a week is ideal. If we get a good 1/4 inch of rain, you probably can skip a watering. You probably don't need to water that time, but otherwise 2 times a week all the way through the growing season is good. If you're planting something this size or larger, you're probably going to need equipment to be able to do the planting. You might be able to dig the holes with shovels. It'll take quite a bit more time, but you could certainly do it. But like this tree right here, if it were harvested out of a field, it would be balled and burlap. The tree and the root ball together is probably going to weigh 250 pounds or more. If we get up to 8-9 foot tall spruce or pine, field grown, balled and burlapped, that's almost 1,000 pound tree. You're going to need to have equipment. 250 pounds, you get a few strong guys together, they can probably muscle around a few of those trees. Certainly not going to be planting, dozens of them very quickly, but they could get a few done. If you get one up to 8, 9, 10 foot tall and it's 1,000 pounds, you're not going to muscle that around. You're going to have equipment, and that's why we've got specialized equipment to do that. We've got hydraulic attachments and that we've got for our tractors and our loaders and mini skids that we can move around easily with. Aftercare is always going to be a consideration with the types of trees that you're planting and how many you're planting, where you're planting them. So we always want to make sure that we've got the best site conditions for the types of trees that we're planting to start off with. But we got to remember that after it's been planted, it needs a little bit of love and attention for the next couple seasons so it can help establish its roots and set itself down. So if you've purchased a new lot out in the country, you're maybe planning to build something there in the future, but you don't have any facilities there right now, you don't have any power, you don't have any water, you don't have a home there, you maybe live an hour away from there or more. You want to take that into consideration if you're going to be planting trees there, because they do need some attention, and they are going to need attention at least weekly, preferably 2 times a week. They get water on them. In North Dakota, we don't get rain 2 times a week every week through the summer. As you know, we can go sometimes a month or two without really getting any significant rains. And if that's the case and you've got newly planted trees, that means you yourself are going to have to get out there and get water on them and help to get them through that first season or two, 2 times a week. A tree like this size, you're going to need to put 10 or 20 gallons of water on it each time. So, you know, if you've got 50 trees planted, that can add up pretty quick. If you've got a few hundred or a couple thousand planted, then it adds up really quick. So maybe in that case, starting with a small bare root and doing some conservation grade plantings is better for you. You would understand then if you don't have water on them, you might lose more that year, but with that lower cost of entry, it's easy for you to go in and replace a few of those that you've lost the next year. And you don't have to be quite so concerned to get out there every single week and make sure it gets water on it. Trees are beautiful and they can be you know, functional as a windbreak or a privacy screen or just adding color and interest to your yard, but you know, we got to remember they can also provide. So we've got, you know, apple trees, we've got cherry trees, choke cherry trees, June berries. We've got those in tree and in bush form. We've got something called a hascap, and those are kind of a similar fruit. I would say, like, if you crossed a blueberry and a grape, they would be kind of similar to that. And those hascaps, since North Dakota is not really a great place to try to grow blueberries, we said it before in a different video, where we don't have that real rich acidic soil that you would find in a blueberry's natural habitat in the mountains. We've got a little bit more alkaline soils here. So if you're looking for something that's got kind of a blueberry look, kind of a blueberry tasting fruit, the hascap, or it's also known as a honeyberry, those would be a good alternate for you that would be native to our environments, and that would do really well in North Dakota. And there's actually quite a few varieties of the hascaps that are available.
Okay, so once we start getting into early spring, late winter in North Dakota, we start thinking about maybe being concerned with winter burn on our evergreens. An evergreen tree never goes dormant. So in the wintertime, the roots will freeze up in the ground and they're no longer able to take up water. But if we've got nice warm days like today where it's 45, almost 50 degrees out, we had nice sunshine today. The top side where the green needles are, they'll start to wake up, and when they wake up, they start going through photosynthesis and using up water just like they would during the growing season. So for this tree, all of the water that it's going to use through the winter up until the ground thaws out and it's back into its growing season next spring, it had to store all that water up from its roots in the fall. So you want to make sure to prevent winter burn your trees get lots of water. Give them a real good soak in the late fall before the ground freezes up. That way they can draw up that water and store it in their needles for the winter. You can see on this tree, arborvitaes are a little bit more sensitive to drought and then to winter burn. So they can be a problem in North Dakota. If they're cared for pretty well and put into protected spaces, they should do just fine. But this one here, it's on the northwest corner, so it's in the wind a little bit. Before we had protection from the other trees, it got hit pretty hard. And you can see it's still got a little bit of signs of winter burn here on some of these branches where it's starting to brown. Those are drying up because it's been a warm winter, so it's probably gone through a lot of water that it had stored up earlier. Got some of this on the top here. This stuff's like crispy and falling off, and that's probably never gonna come back. So what'll happen is some of these healthy branches will take over and they'll be the new leader. Some of this stuff where we've just got a little bit of brown on the tips, this will probably be fine and most of this will pull through. On the back side here, this guy's real ugly. We're not too concerned about that because nobody really sees that from the front of the house anyways, but this had previously experienced real bad winter burn. When it was exposed, we didn't have these other tall trees in, and it was right in the northwest where all the wind comes out of. That, you know, dry winds in the winter blowing past just really wreaked a lot of havoc on here. And so when it got this bad winter burn, it browned up, the needles fell off, and this stuff just totally dried up. It is dead, and this stuff won't come back. You can see this healthy stuff around it is kind of filling in a little bit from the sides and hiding some of that ugly dead stuff from the winter burn. But this stuff's gone. It's never coming back. So if you've got branches that are real big and real ugly hanging out, you can cut those off just to get rid of them if they're unsightly. But like this isn't really causing any problems for anything. You can just leave it and it's fine. Like I said, it's not gonna come back, but at the same time, it's not doing any harm where it's at. So. Just go to the articles tab at treerose4u.com. That's treerose4u.com.